Welcome to Forsythia, sometimes commonly known as yellow bells because they look like little yellow bell flowers. Really pretty plant. Very well known in the West, but actually from Asia. And the varieties that we're talking about in terms of using this plant medicinally are um, uh, Forsythia suspensa, that's very commonly used, Forsythia koreana, that's from Korea, and Forsythia um, viridissima. So those are the three most commonly referenced. Forsythia is one of the 50 fundamental herbs in traditional Chinese medicine. So that's how far back in the pharmacopoeia it goes and how much it's been used, which is great news because it means it's really understood. And they've got a lot of wisdom on how to make use of it. Now, from a Western, so this is an herb in the East that's going to be known for clearing heat. It does other things, but that's kind of like, if you got that one thing about it, you'd be a long way down the road to knowing how to use Forsythia. It's also considered the king herb for treating abscesses, internal and external. So that's kind of a fun niche healing property to have. In the West, it's recognized for its antimicrobial properties, especially antiviral. So antimicrobial basically means it's going to fight viruses, bacteria infections, funguses, yeast, mold. It's a great word when you see it. I always like to underscore that for people because it's kind of one of those things that can whip right by you and you don't really anchor it in what it's fully telling you about a healing plant. So even though this is Forsythia as an antimicrobial, it kind of spikes up with that antiviral healing capability. And it's one of the three key ingredients in a very commonly used and effective, if it's commonly used, it's because it's effective, in a formula known as Shuang Huangliang in China. And this was the formula that was widely being used effectively during the COVID-19. Again, viral infection, a formula with Forsythia in it as one of the main ingredients. Now, Forsythia is a kind of an interesting herb because there are some herbs, generally it's the tonic herbs, that are popular. They can be popularly used alone. Forsythia is one of those herbs that, even though it's very safe and it could be used, making Forsythia syrup, different things like this, just even to enjoy as a beverage, is commonly used with other herbs to take its healing properties and sort of enhance them or balance them out in some way, spread them further, if you will. So one of the common combinations is with chrysanthemum. And this is a lovely tea that can be had by itself. If you haven't tried some, I highly recommend it. Golden yellow, very, very beautiful, lovely flavor. It's a big longevity herb in China. And it's basically their chamomile. We do chamomile in the West. They do chrysanthemum. They have different properties, but they're very similar. So the combination of chrysanthemum and Forsythia is well recognized for like that early stage of cold and flu. You're getting sick or could just be sick and you just don't want it to get any worse than it is. That's a combination that is quickly turned to and made use of to kind of keep things from going deeper and deeper into your lungs, into your digestive system, whatever the heck's going on, both in some cases. Another popular combination is Coptis. And Coptis you may also be familiar with, Huangliang. It is very well known among its many attributes for treating acute infectious disorders. Kind of think dysentery, so you're kind of moving down into the lower part of the body here. And it's also one of the 50 fundamental herbs, and its claim to fame is damp heat. So Forsythia is going to be kind of heat altogether. Coptis comes in and adds that damp heat component. Another herb that it's very commonly used with is honeysuckle. And this is a lovely, lovely combination. They're very similar to one another. So this is one of those classic examples where you could say, well, if I'm already using one herb that does this, why will I add another herb that does the same thing or very similarly does the same thing? And it's because what they'll do is it's known as mutually enhancing. It'll take the properties of one and kind of supercharge it. So together, they're really supercharging their capabilities for being antimicrobial, which they both are, and also for clearing heat. And depending on how sick you are, that dual combination could be just what you need. And depending on your underlying constitution as well. These are both very safe herbs. So they're very, very often used together. Forsythia is more to the bitter cold side. heart, liver, gallbladder in traditional Chinese medicine. Honeysuckle is going to be sweet and cold. So you have this wonderful reinforcing of cooling, because they're both cold herbs, cooling herbs. And you have Forsythia being a little more to the bitter side, so really hitting the digestive components, all the properties that bitter gives us. And honeysuckle coming in with that nourishing property of sweetness. Honeysuckle, if I didn't mention it, it is also going to be clearing heat, and it also does that damp heat, especially in the lower jaw. So you get that sort of reinforcement again of if you've got the diarrhea going on or lower intestinal things. Generally speaking, it's considered that Forsythia would be better for treating Shigella or streptococcus, so strep, right? Honeysuckle is now recognized as being probably stronger and a better choice of what you're coping with is salmonella or streptococcus, strep throat. So you have your staph, right? Your staph infections, and that's Forsythia. Honeysuckle is going to be your strep throat and even pneumonia. And so those little nuances can be very helpful. Now, a lot of times when somebody gets sick with one or the other, you don't know what it is. It's diarrhea. It just isn't very nice. You don't necessarily have gone to the hospital to get that nuanced diagnosis always, or even with, staph infection or with strep throat. So, but if you do know, now you know you could favor one or the other. Or if you're using one herb and you're feeling like you're not quite getting the punch, put those two together and you're covering all ends of the spectrum. It's another reason why they're used together. You don't have to worry if you know which side you have. So there you go. Forsythia. This is a wonderful herb to know about. Visit our website at whiterabbitinstituteofhealing.com to find out more about how you can be making better use of it or growing it in your garden.